Hello, this is the video for open chain and closed chain knee extension and knee flexion. So for open chain knee extension, you would have your foot, you'd be sitting on the edge of something with your foot hanging. Mine isn't hanging, but ideally that's what you want. And lifting your foot up into extension, that's the concentric part of the movement. Holding it up here is the isometric strengthening exercise, and then slowly but controlled lowering it down is the eccentric strengthening exercise. Now, in a gravity neutral position, you would do all three of the same movements, but you would be in a side-lying position so that gravity wouldn't play a factor. So again, coming from that flex position to that extended position is the concentric. Holding it in that extended position is the isometric, and then slowly lowering it back, bringing it back to that flex position is the eccentric. Now you can do this with resistance. You can do the same thing in a gravity neutral position with resistance. You can put a band here, and you can, this is the concentric with resistance. The isometric with resistance is holding it there, and slowly but controlled lowering it is the eccentric. So holding it up here would be the isometric, and slowly lowering it would be the eccentric. You can do the same thing in a gravity utilized position with resistance. You can add weight or use a resistance band for the same concentric, isometric, and eccentric strengthening movements exercises. Now for closed chain knee extension, you can do squats. Now if you have a strong athlete who can do air squats all day, you can do something called a shrimp squat, which is utilizing just one foot, one leg. So unilateral strengthening exercise here, and slowly lowering, so you flex the other knee off the ground, slowly lower the knee down to the ground. That's the eccentric. Now holding it an inch above the ground is the isometric, and then coming up, pushing it off is the concentric. Now obviously with this movement, you got to make sure that the knee is the only thing that lightly touches the ground. That way you don't actually utilize your other muscles to help guide this muscle, because your athlete would be very strong. For people who are not as strong or recovering from an injury, you would do regular air squats utilizing both feet. Coming down, that's the eccentric. Holding it at the bottom is isometric, and then coming up is the concentric. Now for open chain knee flexion, utilizing the hamstring muscles, you would be on a bench or on the ground, lying down just like this, and you would do, coming from that knee extended position to the flex position is the concentric. Holding it up here is the isometric, and then returning it back down is the eccentric. You can do this with the resistance, so you can have a resistance band tied to something forward, or if you have the height, on the ground, and you would do the same thing with the concentric, the isometric, and the eccentric. Now in a gravity neutral position, you'd come in a side-lying position. You can do this with resistance or without resistance, but if you have a resistance band, you want to have it tied forward in front of you. That way, when you come to the knee flex position, the resistance is greater. So that is the concentric part of the movement. Holding it there is the isometric, and slowly returning it back is the eccentric. Now, you can do this with weight too, on the ground, or you'd have to use a resistance band on the when you're in a gravity neutral position, because you don't want to, if you were to put weight on top of that, you'd be utilizing different muscles such as the hip abductors. Now for a closed chain knee flexed movement, you would do something called Nordic hamstring curls, and I haven't quite mastered this movement yet. It's a very good, quite difficult calisthenics movement to do with your body weight. You can do it to strengthen athletes, to strengthen people who are recovering from injury too. Obviously, you would give them support to take weight off if they're a much weaker athlete or recovering from injury. Now, for So you'd be kneeling down on the ground with pressure on your heels. That way your knees stay down as your body moves. You can have a friend hold your heels down, or you can do it with a bed or something heavy like a bar that's only a few inches off the ground. Now, what you're looking for is to keep a very tight body core. For the movement to be more difficult, you want to make sure that your entire body stays in a straight line as you slowly lower your body down. So that's called the hamstring curl. That's the eccentric part of the movement, as you slowly lower your body down in a straight line, and then holding it just an inch above the ground right here would be isometric contraction for strengthening. And then as you pull your body back up in a straight line, you have to make sure that your glutes are squeezed. That way there's no flexion in the hips. And as you bring your body from that ground position all the way up to that kneeling position, that is the concentric strengthening movement. This movement is quite difficult. So for athletes, the way you can scale is you can have a resistance band tied around the shoulders, just like this. And it can be tied to something up there. That way when they do release, they have something holding them back so that they don't have to carry their full weight down. Thank you very much.